Yeah, I have a feeling we're not going to be surprised this year, but I guess that possibility always exists. Lindsey Graham, I am convinced if you asked him for his name and phone number, would somehow tie it into an ISIS comment. But that's his thing. He's trying to be Secretary of Defense under whoever wins in 2016. John Kasich, governor of Ohio, had a decent performance from what I saw and heard last night. And again, as I said earlier, I didn't watch the entire thing, thank God. Today, though, John Kasich not really talking much about last night's performance, even as everybody else is complaining. Kasich is pushing forward with a message of his campaign.
When we start talking about abolishing Medicare or making it voluntary, that scares the living daylights out of seniors, and it's not responsible. When we start talking about shipping 10, 11 million people out of our country, which, of course, is impossible to do, breaking up families, that's irresponsible. When we have tax schemes, they're going to add trillions of dollars to the debt, and we think we'll just kind of grow our way out of it. That doesn't make any sense. And that's just a few of the kind of things that have been said.
Yeah, he's a very expressive hand talker. Producer Dan is making hand gestures as John Kasich's comments are playing. Who has more awkward hand comments during debate answers? John Kasich or Sandy Drabeck Collins? Kind of close.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Mean to ask, but kind of a close observation. Debbie Georgatos is with us. You know her from Fox News Radio and her book and radio show, Ladies, Can We Talk? She's on Twitter, at Debbie, Can We Talk? Debbie Georgatos. Good afternoon. How are you, ma'am?
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Did you sit through the entire thing last night?
I sat through the entire main debate. I actually forgot to set the recorder for the early ones. I did not see the Thanksgiving children's table one.
Right. I turned the radio on about 9:20 or so, and after watching just the last hour, I decided there's no way I'm going back to watch the first hour. I've seen enough. I've just had enough of this. It was horribly moderated, horribly executed. I thought, if anything, and other analysts have said the same thing, it may have actually served to unify some of the candidates on the stage and an attack against the media instead of one another last night.
I think that's true, and I also think it's a little bit of a plus for the American people when they hear people on the right complain about a biased media. If you're not kind of a news wonk and a policy, a political wonk, you may think that's just whining, but that was such an example for all the country to see of the absurdity of the questions, the tone, the follow-up. It really was media bias on display, and I think that might have been a good little introduction for some people in America to what we mean by how biased the media is.
I think tough questions should be asked of all the candidates on both sides, but you could just tell that it was just handled so amateurishly last night when they were asking questions on top of each other, when they were asking questions that the candidates would rebut as being factually accurate. And they were, but even the reporters didn't know their own facts well enough to say, no, it's actually on your website, Donald Trump. It's right here. You've really said this and published it. So they didn't even know their own material well enough. In your opinion, Debbie, who do you think won or had the best performance? Not sure there were any winners, but who had the best performance last night?
I'd love to pick three. I think Ted Cruz probably takes it away because of his comments, not just directed to the media, but he really showed that astounding mind of his to be able to recall every single comment that moderators had made about all the other candidates. I think Ted Cruz was fabulous. Marco Rubio hit it out of the park. Probably Donald Trump did not lose any support. He was trying to look more presidential, I think, so he was a tiny bit more subdued. I think the three of them, and I think Carly Fiorina held her own. She didn't have any, knock out of the park statements, but she really held her own. And I think did pretty well.
I would somewhat agree with you. I also thought John Kasich did well, except in that one exchange that he had with Donald Trump, which I thought was horrible for both of them as candidates. My concern with Ted Cruz, I just don't think he's electable. I don't believe Ted Cruz could win, and I don't know if you were a fan of his before last night or before the debates began. I don't believe Ted Cruz could win an election in general.
Well, it's funny. I try to picture Hillary on the debate stage and somebody on the GOP side. And I do think that it's helpful to have, we need someone who can cover a broad range of issues. She's going to appear as though Hillary will appear as though she's very knowledgeable. She's been in the Senate. She's been Secretary of State. She's not just some, random outsider. So I think that Ted Cruz would do well against her. I think that Marco Rubio would. I think Carly Fiorina would. And I actually even think Donald Trump would. I think all of them could do well against her. I think Ted Cruz, his main thing is he's just kind of a really intellectual, brilliant kind of guy. He doesn't always talk in folksy, homey terms that people can relate as well. But I think he's a really good, solid conservative.
I like Marco Rubio more and more as I watch him during the debates, and I liked him previously. I don't know if he's quite ready to be president, but I think he would be an amazing vice presidential pick, and would have been for Mitt Romney as well.
Oh my gosh, I agree. Marco Rubio last night, he manages in very short answers, and he didn't get the most time last night, and he manages in short answers to convey the I'm an average American like you. I understand the average. He does it in an eloquent way, but he conveys, I understand the plight and the concerns of the American people. I want to make the economy better. I want there to be jobs for your children. I'm a regular guy. I think my dad was a bartender. My mom was a maid. And it's relatable, and yet he's accomplished. He's brilliant. I thought he handled the questions well about his own finances in his personal life, which haven't been perfect. But you kind of like, yeah, I can relate to that guy. I can see how you get in a situation where you make decisions that people can make fun of in your personal family life. I thought he was fabulous.
Debbie, what are your thoughts on John Kasich, our governor here in Ohio?
I was just reading something. I would say the biggest grumble after the debate was the moderators, that they seem to be so harsh. And John Kasich has some really good, likable things about him. I actually met him when I was up in Ohio, and he is a really good guy. But it's kind of astonishing. I thought his very first answer wasn't great last night. That was a dumb question. Please name something negative about yourself, and then because who's going to do that in the debate stage?
Right.
He just kind of launched.
Employers will ask you that during a job interview, and it's a bad question then.
Yeah, yes, it is. I agree. But it was kind of a quick pot shot taken both at Ben Carson and at Donald Trump as the front runners. I don't know. I don't think that sat well with people. But today I noticed he's saying the moderators, he thought they did a good job. He's very appreciative of how they did their job. I think that's amazing because I think the moderators of all the losers, they were the biggest losers. But John Kasich has a record that people could really respect. I mean, both having been governor, having served in Congress, he's actually done the things we're talking about. And this was a debate about finances and jobs and the economy. And I thought he represented his record well.
Yeah, I take some heat from our listeners here who tend to be a little bit more conservative. I'm what I would consider to be probably more right of center and willing to negotiate and I hate to use the dirty word, but compromise. And that I think is one of the things that brings me more towards John Kasich, who is either well loved in Ohio or absolutely despised because of some of the things that he has done with Common Core and Medicare, Medicaid, and under Obamacare expansion. So conservatives, Republicans in Ohio either love him or hate him, and there's really no in between. It's kind of fascinating to watch the response that he gets here in his own home state.
Yeah, I will say I think among the top issues for voters around the country in this election next year is going to be immigration. And I think that perhaps the way, and Donald Trump isn't my favorite candidate, but, his statements like, we do have a problem with criminals crossing the border. We do have a lawless system. We do have people here who are just not here to work. They're here to take advantage of our system. I think those statements resonate with a lot of the base primary voters. And so I think that that's where an area where John Kasich will have a lot of trouble in primaries, especially in these border states down here. Like I'm in Texas, in Dallas, Texas. People want to hear firm talk about immigration, and this idea that you could fight against immigration reform, as John Kasich said last night. Well, but you can't separate families. But no one's really saying separate families. They're saying, okay, that maybe you all need to go home. And I think in a place like Texas, that resonates. I don't know around the country. Maybe in Ohio it's different, but I think to really resonate with the core Southern conservative voters, you've got to sound stronger on immigration and firmer on immigration than I think he did last night.
If Donald Trump has added one positive to the Republican primary debate, it's it's his stance on immigration and always putting immigration as a major issue. Donald Trump scares the hell out of me. In fact, a couple of days ago here on the show, I said if it came down to a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, that I would vote for Hillary Clinton. And I mean that in a way that I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton or that I really would vote for, but just to kind of put an exclamation mark on the point that Donald Trump is not a candidate that I could trust or get behind. Would he be better than Hillary? I don't know, but he scares the hell out of me.
I'm not excited about him, but I will say I do like when he made his immigration remarks in his when he announced his candidacy, he got a lot of flack, and he did go to Jeff Sessions, probably the most knowledgeable United States senator on immigration, came up with a really strong immigration policy. I think that Donald Trump, didn't know where to go with it. He was kind of speaking from the gut, but I took a little bit of encouragement for the fact he went to Jeff Sessions. And when he had to do when he did his tax policy, Donald Trump, went to some of the stellar conservative tax people in the country. He went to Steve Forbes and who's the guy who did the Laffer curve? He went to Dr. Arthur Laffer. So I'm hoping he'd be willing to listen to people who are wiser than he when he makes policies but I got to tell you, I think the core thing with Trump, why he's resonating, is kind of like this nationalist, versus the globalist thinking. There's so much on the left that's all about, well, we're part of the international community, everything's global, we have to defer to the UN, we have to do whatever the other countries tell us. And people love that Donald Trump, he isn't as articulate as you might like about it. He's kind of saying, America's a good place, we're a good country. I think that nationalist versus the anxiety about globalists is what's making a lot of people kind of like him.
Yeah, Debbie Georgatos, ladiescanwetalk.org is your website, at Debbie Can We Talk. I've got to wrap things up, but real quick, Jeb Bush, done? Seems to be.
Yes, done. His attack on Marco Rubio about that that was horrible. It was so tone deaf. It was cringeworthy.
Whoever advised him on that political malpractice, just horrible. Debbie, we'll talk to you soon. It's 3:51 here on News Radio 1370. Weather and traffic every 15 minutes on the Scott Show.